via Mentor Practices, the Mentoring Lounge, about all things mentor, mentoring, mentorship, and mentoring matters. So Doug and I are here from the International Mentoring Community, and we bring this lounge to you to explore, find, discover, shape, share ideas, insights, investigations, interpretations, and inquiries about mentoring. And today we've got the 5 tips to help you mentor with focus. That's where we're going to go. And then Doug said he wanted to chat with me about a new book that I have up on Amazon. I haven't actually done a full launch of it, but we can certainly explore it today. So that's where we're going on today's broadcast. And as we usually do, Doug and I are going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to go over the definition of mentoring, and then we'll get into the topic of the 5 tips to help you mentor with focus before we do the interview. So, Doug, why don't you introduce yourself in terms of the IMC, the International Mentoring Community?
So I'm Doug Lawrence, and I have to think now for a moment. I am the Director of Practice and Outreach for the International Mentoring Community. I'm co-founder as well. So.
And you have your own practice as well, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I have my own practice, and my company is Talent C, and all things mentoring is the best way that I describe it.
And for myself, Stephen Hobbs, I am the Director of Education and Certification. So it sort of works out that you enter in having a conversation with Doug, then I assist with the education, depending on which way you want to go, set you up for the verification where you get to meet Doug again. That's how we're doing it. Once the community is up and running, we'll be having other people involved in the different kinds of tasks. I have my own practice, not as deep and rich as what Doug is, through the wealth movement. I guide olders, or maybe might be a better way, I invite olders to be elders who mentor. And that's where I'm coming into this. It's taking a look at this notion of aging, lived experience, and what can you do with it? And I thought mentoring be a great way. Doug also brings out the story of mental health. He's exploring a lot of other topics in a deeper, richer way. We'll certainly be bringing some of those insights to you as well through the Mentoring Lounge. As our custom, we go over our definition of mentoring just so that we have a sort of a base platform to stand on, so you understand where we're coming from, and then we use it to come back and share a little bit more. And today would be the 5 tips to help you mentor with focus. So Doug, do you want to share the definition?
So the definition of mentoring is a two-way trusted relationship where both the mentor and the mentee are going to develop on a personal and professional level.
Is there anything in there in particular you want to emphasize today?
The big thing for me is the two-way trusted relationship, because without that, you really don't have anything. So.
And I think that leans into the topic today in terms of focus and how to help a mentor to stay with that focus. So why don't we just jump in and start exploring what's possible here. So what we've done is that we created an image that we put up through social media. And with that image, what we're able to do is sort of capture the essence of these 5 points that we wanted to raise today. And I'm just going to bring it up here. It should be live to us. And what it is a way in which to summarize some ideas from our deep practice, of which Doug and I are going to go through today, and be able to share each one of those with you. Now, we're going to be going over 1 and 2 here. Maintain your clarity of the meaning of mentor. And remember, when you mentor, you mentor. And then what I'll do is I will bring this
So while you're sorting out, I'm going to take a look. We've actually got a question here from a Facebook user that asked the question, any wisdom on living with my 87-year-old mom? Unique question in that that can always be a challenge. And I know that I certainly haven't had it where any one of my parents or my in-laws have actually lived with me in that particular stage. But as a mentor, my advice to you would be you have this opportunity to tap into the lived experience of somebody who has been on this earth for 87 and some odd years. And you need to leverage that relationship and be able to draw on their lived experience to help you become, just that much more better of a person. And I think when you do that, you're going to demonstrate respect, and that's going to be something that an 87-year-old mom is probably expecting. Is that at that age, I know when I get to be 87 years of age, and that's maybe not that far away, but when I get to be that age, that there's that element of respect that I would be looking for, sort of the give and get type idea is. So anyhow, that's the wisdom I can pass on or impart on you today for, in relation to the question, any wisdom on living with my 87-year-old mom. And thank you for reaching out to us and posing that question.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that I've got myself open twice. So I am going to close one.
Okay.
And I should be back in now, correct?
Correct.
Well, that was kind of fun. I don't know what happened there. All of a sudden, and on my side, it just went off. I took off. So thanks for continuing that. I think I had just brought up the image and talking about the 5 points that we were going to go over today. I think that's what we did, right? And that's when I dropped off when I started to come back, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So of the 5 points, what I'd like to do is just take a look at the first one here. And Doug and I are just going to share a little bit more about it and just sort of unpack it for ourselves as we move forward. And the first one is to maintain your clarity of the meaning of mentor. All right. Now, for me, I'm going to jump in because this is one of the keys that I always bring forward. And even when I'm doing my consulting work, any work that I'm doing with anyone, or I'm starting up new conversations with others, it's important for me, may not always be important for the person I'm sharing with, but eventually they get why I'm doing it. It's to define the terms and concepts that you're going to be interacting with. So if I was talking to someone about leadership, then what is leadership? What is leading? What is leader? These kind of terms. The same thing with mentor. What is mentor? What's mentoring? What's mentorship? And go through those terms so that, again, we have sort of this base from which to work. That's why we share the definition of mentoring each time we do one of the broadcasts. And we do that just simply because we want to make sure that that's that platform. I do it so that I can make sure that the person I'm interacting with, a mentee, understands what a mentor is and what mentoring is about. And I always remember the following, and this is a truth that it rings with me every day, is that clarify from consistency. And what happens is if you don't define those terms and concepts, and you're not consistent, and you're sort of going wherever the wind blows you or wherever the current of the ocean is taking you, well, you might end up somewhere, but it may not be where you really want to go. Therefore, this notion of clarity, maintain your understanding of the meaning of mentor. Anything you want to add to that, Doug?
For me, the big thing is the aspect of setting expectations so that both parties understand, what is mentoring and the direction that we're going to go, moving forward. So I think, for me, it's expectation setting.
Yeah. And it leans into the next one, which is remember, when you mentor, you mentor. And another thing that tends to happen is people say, well, I'm a facilitator, and then they start instructing. Oh, I'm a coach, and I start mentoring. Oh, I'm a mentor, I start coaching. And we start confusing these approaches to education. And we don't say, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is what's important right now. It's not to say you can't use coaching while you're mentoring. That's not what I'm saying. It's just be clear in your own mind, this clarity from consistency, the meaning that you're working with, so that the person you're interacting with is clear about what you're doing. Anything you want to add to that one?
Just the only thing that sort of stood out for me was the aspect of each one of those, we'll call them modalities, or that's probably the best word I can come up with right now. Each one of those could, in fact, have a different outcome based on how you apply the various elements of like coaching or mentoring or counseling or whatever. You could end up with different outcomes. In fact, you probably will end up with different outcomes.
Yeah, and again, that's that consistency aspect. There was a software company that I was supporting, and they wanted me to come in and help them around bringing the stories of mentoring out. They had the software, but they didn't necessarily have all the deep practice of what it means to mentor. And one day I was in a meeting, and I said, it's really important that we come to understand what mentor means. You're showing this slide that's explaining what the software is doing, and it's to do with mentoring, but you're talking about advising and advocating and doing all these other kind of things. While they may be aspects of mentoring, you are actually saying to the clients, well, we can do all these different kinds of educating approaches, but we're just going to call it mentoring for a simple message. And I just went, oh, hang on a minute, I got to deal with this one. and it sort of it put a bit of a burr in between for a little while until he got to understand what I was attempting to do. And that's, you hired me for that reason. I wanted to get that out. And he said, I get it now. And there's some slight variations of the way in which he spoke about it until I went to the next presentation at a conference. And guess what he did? He went back and spoke about it the way he did before. So I wasn't long for taking an exit from that company. So that's how much I will stand in those 2 points about maintain clarity of the meaning of mentor. And remember, when you mentor, you mentor. So I just thought that I'd bring that. Now, the next one that we'll have a conversation about is check with the mentee that you're tracking well. Now, Doug, you share, quite often with me the importance of sort of that reflection and stepping back a little bit and checking on it. You want to just share some of your thoughts around this one?
Yeah, what I typically do for me from a practice perspective is that at the end of every mentoring session, I always ask the question, what was the value that we got from our time together today? And if it ends up that, the mentee says, well, I thought we would have done this or we would have done that, we need to have those conversations right then and there in order to clarify any understanding or misunderstanding, and then we can move forward from that, from that point onwards. But the whole thing, I'm a huge proponent of, I need to make sure that not only is the mentee getting the value, but the organization that brought me in, I want to make sure that they see that this mentoring does bring value to their organization.
Yeah, and we use the word well here as well. And it's there because, tracking correctly, tracking in the right way, tracking. One of the things that Doug and I have talked about, and we actually put it into the profile, is the understanding about the well-being, well-living connections, the well-being of the person, the well-living of the sharing, the relationship that takes place with it. And if we're not tracking it even into that psychological safety aspect, that even to the point of not just mental, but soul, and some people talk about the spiritual, really being aware and finding out how far one can go with understanding that safety aspect of that's the tracking well. And we've shot videos about that are up on our YouTube channel. All right, and you may be listening live to this one in Facebook at this point in time. If not, you may be listening on different kinds of the channels, but there is the International Mentoring Community YouTube channel, and you can drop in and you can see all the different videos that we have there, and you can certainly subscribe, and we'd certainly appreciate that, and hit that like button. So the next one I wanted to take a look at is, and Doug and I are actually, well, Doug's going to be the primary person, but we are going to run a workshop on logbooks. And that's why this next one is so important. Reflect on your practice and add notes to your log. So it sort of falls a little bit out of what we were just talking about, the reflection, but what do you do with that reflection? And that's where the logbook comes in. Now, Doug, you are going to be sharing, a couple of different logbook formats. One in particular, we're going to spend a bit more time with. But let's just go back, this notion of documentation. What's important about maintaining your logbook?
Well, probably the most important thing is the aspect of, for somebody who's going through certification or recertification, it becomes a most valuable tool in demonstrating how you've applied the mentoring processes and concepts in a number of different and a number of diverse situations. And so it provides that record for you to be able to submit as part of your certification or recert package, like I said. The other part is that I use it quite often to, if I'm going to meet with somebody that I've had a couple of sessions with already, I will go back and look at my log to see what we talked about, what progress we had made, what were some of the challenges, and that helps me be better prepared for the time I'm about to spend with that person.
Yeah, and those are two, great aspects of it. One is there's a continuous learning aspect, but then there's, well, if I'm doing that continuous learning, yes, I'm improving my practice, but also to Doug's point, and being the one who makes sure certification works, is that certification. And that's really important, especially if you're new to mentoring and you're just getting into it. Sometimes I know that those who've been in it for a while, they might sort of go, yeah, I don't need to worry about that. It'll be sort of up my sleeve when I need it. And I think Doug and I would both agree here is, well, it may be up your sleeve, but it could get caught in a couple of threads on the way down, and it doesn't make it the way that you want it to. So it'd be better if you make sure that you clean up everything and it's logged out so you can go back and think about it. And that's why certification is so helpful. So the next one to take a look at is advance your practice, read, consider, and share. Now with this one, practice, continuous practice, improvement, learning, those kind of words. This is something that from a mentoring, tapping into mentorship is important again, because there's always little nuance shifts that are there that can help you. And Doug knows this, is that he started along a path of, mentoring in the workplace, and he's going down some really interesting pathways now about how to bring that in because of things like what happened in 2019, 2020, 2021 that brought a lot of issues to the foreground, mental health. And through his own practice of reading and considering, you dove into a whole nother world, right? Not that you didn't know about it, but you really dove in there. You've done some more certifications yourself, right? To and deepen and enrich. These are two words that we often use in IMC. Deepen and enrich your practice, and now you're sharing that. Do you want to anything you want to bring to the surface around what I just shared there?
Well, it's, the whole aspect of, the certificate of practice mentor and the certificate of practice journey mentor is that it's a process of continuous learning and development. And so you're absolutely right. I was searching for how I described it to some folks was that I'm heading on this journey, and as part of that journey, I need to have the right tools in my toolkit in order to be able to bring value to a mentoring relationship, to create that deeper, richer mentoring relationship. And in order to do that, I'm taking some courses, online courses, and strengthening my ability to be able to deal with grief and bereavement on the mental health side of things, having a better understanding of the different stages of grief, and as well from there, understanding the impact that PTSD will have on a lot of those things. And I have my own lived experience, which I readily share as well. Like, I've done in excess of 90 podcasts where the primary topic was grief, post-traumatic stress, mental health, all of those elements. And my sole purpose is to share as much as I possibly can, the processes, the techniques, whatever you want to use, with as many people as I can, if I can help them in their growth, in their journey that they're going on for their mental health.
Oh, for sure. Well, one of the ways that I do it in terms of deepen and enrich my practice, I enjoy writing. And we're going to go here in a few minutes and have a chat about the latest book that I have up. But Doug, you've got two already out there, but you've got a third one on the way. So he also does the writing, and I think tapping into your mentoring logs also gave you a lot of insights for the stories that you brought out in those books. True?
True. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Because as I go back and reflect on the log and the different situations, it conjures up various situations that I can then sort of, apply in how I'm approaching different situations, and how I can share that to help other people in their growth and help them in dealing with their healing from a mental health perspective.
Yeah. And for myself is that from an education background, that's where I come from in terms of experience and how to leverage experience and the different kind of educating approaches. The writing allows me to bring out concepts and practices that form the basis that goes into the profiles. And then as someone goes to work with those, you've got someone like Doug who goes, well, you could use it that way, but have you thought about it from this perspective? Or here's a different consideration. And that's why it's so great what we have here. And this is why we want to extend the community into not only a community of practice, but can we get it to a point of community of significance so that what we're able to do is impact, right, the whole world through mentoring and the value of that mentoring. And that's why the topic was mentor with focus and improve, focus, and strengthen. Those are three verbs that I tend to work with. But the notion of focus is, in a sense, stay present, all right? To be there with the person, because sometimes what happens is, as a mentor, you can get lost and you're off thinking about something else. Not to say the mentee can't do it as well, but you certainly, as the mentor, to stay focused, to stay present with the mentee is very helpful. And it's also helpful yourself in terms of your own practice perspective. So these are why we wanted to share these tips, to see if they would help you. And again, what I would encourage is I would actually go back and listen to the 5 tips again and pick up what's there. If you've got your journal logbook, take some notes, put them away, see what you can do with them, and see what happens from that perspective. Is there anything you want to share as a concluding thought about the 5 tips to help you mentor with focus that you want to bring to the surface right now before you said you wanted to ask me some questions about the latest book. So just before we transition over.
I think that a lot of the questions that I have will come out in our discussion about your book.
Oh, okay, great, fair enough. Well, then we've got a transition point here. Doug and I said we take maybe 5-7 minutes or so. All right, we may come back and do an actual video broadcast on the book and go over it. But Doug, you said you had some questions for me today. I don't know what he's asking, folks. Okay, so this is going to be kind of fun. I said I don't want to know what the questions are ahead of time, so I just wanted to add that in. So over to you, sir.
All right. So we've already had, a pretty good discussion around mentoring and what is it and stuff like that. But in your book, you actually define key concepts of mentoring. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, for sure. And just for people to see, this is the cover of the book, Pathway for Mentoring Now, Mentor Within, Mentoring Without. And the book is up on Amazon, so I just wanted to get that component out. Now, in the book, what I did was that I was reflecting on my own practice of mentoring. So this is very much about that practice and seeing what is possible. And therefore, from a practice point of view, I needed to understand the concepts, a lot of the concepts that would be necessary to understand the way in which I go about my practice. And my practice can be somewhat slightly different to what Doug does in terms of how he unfolds it. But I thought that I would share it. It was time, and that's why I did it as Mentoring Now, all right, and to bring some of those concepts out. And what happens is that there's 7 core categories, and of that, there are 5 sort of key statements in each of them, right, that brings out this concept of practice. But some of them are really concept-based, right, thinking about it, and then some, whoa, where did you go? You dove into a whole bunch of really neat and kind of interesting practices. So did I cover what you were after for that one?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So as I think back to going through the book and the different aspects, one particular chapter talked about committing to moving in and moving on. Can you share a little bit about what your thoughts were with that?
Yeah, the idea there is actually comes back to reflection in, reflection on. And the idea there is that while you're in the mentoring, and this is what I, again, tend to do, something I learned through my days of serving as an educator in a lot of different settings, colleges, university, workshops, retreats, all that, is that I learned that I can reflect while I'm in things. And I might get a feeling, oh, hang on, I got to do a little adjustment. Or there's a lot of wiggling going on in the room. I better do a little adjustment. I'm reflecting in it. So when you're interacting with the mentee, you can pick up some nuances. We can call it body language, you can call it words, we can call it whatever. There might be just an intuitive, hang on a minute, something has to shift just slightly here, right? And that's reflecting in. It's while I'm doing it. But I also learned, and this was a really valuable skill for me, is to sort of go outside of myself and look on what's taking place. So it's sort of like I am there, I'm present, but I'm able to actually look at the two of us to find out what's going on. And there I might pick up, it's getting kind of noisy. Hang on a minute. Is someone looking at us or looking over our shoulder? Is there something that's going on here about the on aspect of this mentoring I need to pay attention to, right? And so I was able to then work this reflecting and reflecting on, so that if there is some adjustments that had to happen, I could do so, but also reflecting in allowed me to sometimes take some notes if it was okay with the mentee. Reflecting on gave me another set of notes at the end of it as well.
Okay. This particular one, when I looked at it, I thought, this is interesting. So let's, the statement, walk together with the value of safety. Can you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's that is an interesting one because unbeknownst to me, but as I started to reflect on mentoring and a lot of the things that I was doing, I realized that I had actually created a safety approach. Is that when I interacting with people, I manage the safe systems for the person. Therefore, the systems being the structure, the arrangement, and I lead the person myself from safer practices, ways that we interact, our relationships, and that. So I started to really, okay, what's the safety thing about? And I started digging into it, and that's where I mentioned earlier about that psychological safety aspect. And to be able to understand as well, there's the physical, the mental, emotional, there's socio spiritual, there's the whole picture of looking at it. This notion of safety really came to the forefront. And I mentioned about stay present. There's an actual another phrase that I use, which is stay found. And that comes about because of years and years of wilderness remote first aid that I instructed. I kept saying to people, you got to stay found even when you've got someone that's injured with you. Don't get lost by walking around if you find yourself, not quite sure where to go, or don't start walking out if sending someone out might be better than trying to walk everyone out. So it was this concept of stay found. It's an approach. And how do you go about doing it? And that's why the value of safety, walking with the value of safety is so important to keep it there. It may not be always in the forefront, like myself, I hadn't always quite picked it up, but it's always been an underlying approach that I use while I'm mentoring.
Good, good. One last question, and celebrate certification is the way. What were you thinking?
Well, there might be a sort of an obvious connection. I'm director of education certification for IMC, but where I was really coming from was the following: just because you think you can doesn't mean you should. And Doug and I have talked about this before. There's people who might go, well, I got lived experience, or I got something, I could mentor someone, I could coach someone. Well, it doesn't mean you should. And if you are going to go down that road and you're new to it, I would encourage you to seek out the certification that goes with the educating approach that you want to use. So if it's coaching, you can go down the coaching road. For us, mentoring is go down the mentoring pathway of certification. So it's the way, right? Certification is a way of learning, but I'm also attempting to put a little bit more oomph, right? A really technical term here, putting more oomph on the way forward with mentoring. I certainly encourage you, not just because I'm the director of education certification, I get that, but to truly have it, to deepen your practice, go into certification and be with others in community. That is why it's the way, not a way. It's the way of being able to bring it forward for yourself.
Okay, good. So my thoughts after listening to all that you shared with us this morning is that we actually need to come back and do a deeper dive into the book and into each of the different areas so that we can really truly appreciate the story that you're telling.
That'd be great. And there actually is a story in there as well of lawn or loan, depending on how one wants to say it. I wove in a character who is presenting situations that link up to each of the chapters. And I thought that that would be a great way. So there is a story character we can follow in it. So sure, I'd love to, we can certainly come back and do another one. And I also know you've got another one coming out, so maybe we can chat about it and even another broadcast. And for those of you who have comments for us or questions, or you want to share a funny, there is the comments section wherever you're seeing this video that you can certainly add it there. Again, subscribe depending on the channel that you're looking through. You can go to the website mentorpractices.com. There's the contact form there if you want to send us something. On the front page is the access to the certification. And it's fairly simple, I think Doug agrees, it's a fairly simple, is you just go in, you take a load, download the form, the profile form, do a self-assessment, and then have a conversation with Doug, and we help you sort out what's the best pathway through. To the point of maybe certification isn't the way for you, but the awareness that the certification system that we have is a way in which to start to learn about mentoring. So again, there's a good distinction between the way and the way that we can bring it forward. So I think we're getting close to closing here, Doug. Is that true?
Yep.
Okay.
Nice.
So as tradition, all right, I bring us into the mentoring lounge, and it is Doug who takes us out of the mentoring lounge. He gets to share something that he thinks is important for all of us to remember. When I know that he's done, I will just say, take care, and I will close down the broadcast. So over to you, Doug. What do you want to share with us?
So we've covered a lot of very interesting topics and shared some very interesting thoughts this morning. And the one that stands out for me that just pops when I reflect back on everything is the aspect of the walk together with the value of safety. And I guess a large part of my reason for that is I just keep thinking of the mental health journey and how, excuse me, how people are always looking for somebody to reach out and take their hand and help them. And so that statement, walk together with the value of safety, just stood out for me in that regard.
All right. Well,